Welcome everyone to yet another LinkedIn Live. I'm Mark Stabina from Winning EQ. I help companies elevate their performance, improve their culture by improving its people. And this is probably the most important topic I believe that we've talked about so far, and one that affects all of us: time. We're going to talk about time, how to be more time effective. And the title suggests something I think we can all relate to: being productive versus being busy, which we're always claiming. We're busy and our lives are getting busier and busier. But does that mean we are making the most of our time? Does that mean we are getting the results that we want for ourselves and for our organizations? Well, let's dive into that a little bit today. I have some hints, some takeaways, some productivity hacks that I want to share with you. There's so many out there. And I actually have a model that I've created with an acronym to help you remember it. It's called the MESH method. You know what? Let's jump into it right now. I'm going to tell you what my MESH method is all about. The way to remember MESH, think of this as the strong fabric of your time management practice. We start with meaning. That's the M, and I'll explain more in detail what each of these words means. Then we move to energizing. Scheduling, which is part of our daily practice, isn't it? When we schedule everything, especially at work, with our calendars. And honoring. So setting the schedule's one thing, it's another thing to actually execute it. So how can we honor the schedule that we set for ourselves and others? Now, you can even look at the first two words as meaning, and energizing is focusing on us, filling our cup. Self-care, focusing on how we can create the platform to set our time management practice. Meaning. What does time mean to us? How easily we take time for granted, right? It is our most precious, non-renewable resource. And 1440 is a number that represents how many minutes we have in a day of 24 hours. Now, that is including sleep. So if we take sleep out of it, let's say you get 8 hours sleep consistently, which would be nice. I know a lot of you are just laughing at that. But if we use 8 hours sleep as a measure and we don't count those minutes, here are how much or how many waking minutes we have in a day. 960 minutes. How are we spending it? What are we doing with those 960 minutes? You can do a lot in 1 minute, especially if you're urgent and intentional. But if we're honest with ourselves, I bet if we took stock of how we spend our minutes, we spend a lot of those not really doing anything, or especially not spending it effectively. And you can use 960 or 1440. You can put it up on your wall. You can put it by your laptop, on your fridge, on your bathroom mirror, to remind yourself how many minutes you have in that day. So let's make the most of it. Some people tattoo their skin with phrases, mottos that mean a lot to them, that connect them to the importance, the impermanence of time. This one here, this is your life and it's ending 1 minute at a time. So many things we can tattoo our skin with. Carpe diem, life is now, life is short, you name it. Or this is a poem that I actually have by my bedside that I read every day to start the day. I'm not going to read it now, but I urge you to go and look it up. The Dash by Linda Ellis. Really moving little story about how important time is and how we spend it. Or if you've read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about beginning with the end in mind. Now, this is quite a grave image right now. That's your dad joke for the day. But this is like imagining your funeral, imagining you're dead. And for many people, that's quite morbid, but none of us are getting out of this alive, people. So the more we can think about our death, which isn't guaranteed how it's going to happen, but if we imagine it the way we want to imagine it, how does our funeral look? Who's showing up? What are they saying about you in the eulogy? Have you achieved everything you want to achieve? Have you experienced life the way that you would have hoped? Are you ready to leave this version of life? Start there. And if not, if you look backwards and how you're spending your days and your minutes, and you think that it won't lead to that ideal end of your life, start putting things in place to ensure that you get to this point where you are satisfied with how people remember you. So this is all about connecting you to the meaning of time. What does time mean to you? So once we start taking it for granted, we can connect back to, all right, this time is important to me. So let's get busy using it effectively and intentionally. So remember the E, that takes care of meaning. Now we're moving on to energizing. Right? We need to energize ourselves. We need to have the energy to be able to use these minutes, these seconds, these hours, these days effectively. So what are we doing to make sure that we are optimally energized? Think of it as maybe filling your own glass. And when you give to tasks, to other people, your energy, you give from an overflowing cup, not just a full cup, but we can energize ourselves and practice self-care to the point where we've got so much energy to spare. And the overflow is where we're able to freely give it to other people. Tough to do, but it's worthwhile practicing. And here are some of the ways we can do that. Here's some of the ways we can fill our glass so that with the overflow we give to others. The 3 pillars, non-negotiable, in my opinion: quality sleep, healthy nutrition, regular exercise. Take care of those 3 first and foremost, and you are on your way to having sufficient energy to make the most of your time. Seems like a no-brainer. It's so often neglected. Work becomes a priority first over our exercise, over eating healthy. We run out of time and we just grab some fast food that's not particularly good for us. Well, the irony is, over time, you're not going to be able to do that work effectively that you're prioritizing if you're not sufficiently energized to do it. And this can lead to burnout. And let's include this in nutrition as well. Making sure you're hydrated. Most of our body is made up of water, obviously, and our brain especially. So keeping that bottle next to you. One thing I do to ensure that I always have this next to me, or a large bottle or a container full of water throughout the day. And I set myself little goals on how much I drink through the day. Have it with you at all times, and that helps you with the habit of constantly hydrating. And mindfulness. Now, mindfulness to me simply means being able to bring your mind to the present moment, because how often our mind, we have thoughts, the noise in our mind and the talk that we have in our head is predominantly anywhere but the present moment. It's in the future when we worry about something, when we have anxious thoughts or anxiety. Well, we're in the future. We are spending our brain energy in a time that doesn't exist yet. Or we're stuck in the past. We're attached to something that's already happened. We might have regret or guilt about something or an action that we made. Well, now we're in the past, which also doesn't exist. So mindfulness is the practice of bringing ourselves and our mind to the present moment, which is the only thing, people, that actually exists this moment right now. Meditation is one way to do that, but there's many, many ways that we can bring ourselves to the present moment. So this is part of energizing ourselves and making sure that we are mentally, physically, and emotionally fit to use our time effectively. And this is another one that can really be useful, is forcing ourselves to take breaks, like scheduling those breaks. And I call that method pulse and pause. So we're pulsing, we've got focused work, we've got a busy day. So we're into our task and we have our attention focused on something. And then we are forcing ourselves to pause after around 25, 30 minutes, because that's all the brain can really handle on really focused attention, and then get back to it in another block of focused attention. We are more likely to get way more done doing it that way than, say, spending 2 to 3 hours constantly on the one thing. We might feel like we're getting it done and we're being effective, but our brains aren't wired that way. Distractions creep in. And if we're not forcing ourselves to take breaks, we don't get as much work done and we're not as effective because we can't focus for that long. So Morning routine, another big way to energize ourselves. You get that taken care of in the morning, we're set up for the rest of the day. Win the morning, win the day, folks. And here's some great resources you can use to help you form your morning routine if you don't have one already. Hal Elrod, in fact, The Miracle Morning, that book, I think there's programs you can join that helps you form that winning morning. Tim Ferriss, big fan of the morning ritual. Here's a great little ebook that you can look up with 5 rituals that he follows that you can also follow to help you win the morning. And then Robin Sharma, great book, The 5 a.m. Club, pretty hardcore, talks about making sure you consistently get up before 5 a.m. And that's a great way to win the day. You get to 9 a.m., you'll feel like you've lived a whole day. So check those out if you haven't already. Get that morning routine set up. Okay, so that takes care of the me, the M and the E, meaning I'm connected to what time means to me and how important it is, and I'm figuring out how to energize myself so I'm ready to use it effectively. Now, let's talk about the practical elements of effective time management, scheduling and honoring that schedule. We all have Google Calendars or a version of it. The calendar on the wall. This is the society and the world that we live in. And most of you probably love a good to-do list, like me. Love my to-do lists. Now, I've said calendar versus to-do list. Quite often we have both. Well, here's my invitation, my challenge, is do away with the to-do list and just do everything in your calendar. It's changed my life. It's been a game changer. And I'll explain more about how that came about. The reason why I decided to do this, because I discovered this thing called the Zeigarnik effect, which is a psychological phenomenon that was coined by the Soviet psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik, who found that when we have a number of tasks that we've set for ourselves that are unfinished, they're incomplete. In other words, a to-do list that we haven't checked off yet. Normally it rolls over into another day and then another day, and we have this long list of things that we still haven't got done yet. Well, he found that when we have those outstanding tasks, subconsciously, it negatively affects the attention that we're trying to put into our current task. So when we're trying to focus on what we're doing right now, we are actually being affected by the things we haven't done yet. You know, when you get that overwhelmed feeling, you got all these tasks. So if we can take that to-do list and put it in our calendar instead, and everything stays there, you might find that you can't fit everything into your calendar. So then we start prioritizing the most important things. Quite often that happens with our to-do list. It's full of stuff that's really not that important, but it weighs us down. So have a to-do list, but convert it to your calendar and then do away with the to-do list, and then everything lies in your calendar. If it doesn't make the calendar, it doesn't get done. Make that a point and be okay with it not getting done because it wasn't important enough in the first place. It's got to be important to make your calendar. Give it a try. And your most important task, talk about prioritizing. Start with that in the day. Of all the things that you want to get done or you need to get done, all right, what's my most important? Let's tackle that first. We like to do the easier things first to get us into the day. Check our emails. Makes us feel accomplished, doesn't it? But it's not a good use of our most valuable, attentive hours when we're freshest. And that's normally the first 2 hours after we're fully awake. So use that time doing the more difficult tasks. First 2 hours of the day, eat the frog, because the frog is another way of saying just eat that thing that's disgusting that we've been putting off, that we really don't enjoy doing. But once you do it, sets the tone for the rest of the day, and you are motivated and you're ready to tackle everything else. Stop having those things hanging over you for the whole day and then making excuses for not doing them. You can consider those important things as rocks in the jar. You might have seen this experiment where the glass jar, depending on how we fill it, right, will depend how much we can pack into it. So a common mistake is doing the little things first instead of the important things being our rocks and putting those in first. This is what it looks like. Here's our rocks. They are our most important tasks, right? And here are the pebbles, the day-to-day responsibilities you can think about. They need to get done, but they can be pushed back if need be, right? And then the interruptions, the distractions that inevitably happen all day that we put our mind to, think of that as the sand. When we make the mistake of putting them in the jar first, remember the jar is our day of 960 minutes or the 24 hours we think we have. Then after that, we put in the smaller pebbles, which are those day-to-day tasks that don't really need to get done right now, but we do them anyway. And now we're trying to fit our rocks, the most important things, after everything else. Well, guess what? They don't fit. But if we put them in first, right, that's eating the frog, then we fill up with the smaller pebbles, and then the sand around that, look at that, we fit all of it into that jar. It's a great little analogy and experiment that talks about how to structure our day. So we've scheduled, right? We've got our calendar, we've got the important things in the calendar, we've put blocks of time for those. How do we actually get it done? It's great intention, but execution is another matter. So here's some things we can do. Ask yourself firstly, okay, if I'm not honoring my calendar and I've put these things in there, but they're not actually getting done, well, what's getting in the way? Really sit with yourself and honestly figure out what it is that's preventing you from honoring your calendar. And here's a few things that I have found, if I'm honest with myself. I'm lacking meaning with the way that I'm using my time. It's not purposeful. I'm not passionate about it. And that's the first step, isn't it, of the MESH method. Meaning, connect back to it. I'm just taking my time for granted now. I need to get back to knowing how important it is. And I'm not energizing myself. That's what's getting in the way. I'm procrastinating. I'm tired. I'm overwhelmed. All right, I'm not structuring things, but I'm also not taking care of myself. That is going to lead to not doing the things on your calendar that you've set for yourself. And the big one, distractions. Wow. How many distractions creep into our day? If you did an audit of your day and you actually did a little, some of you might have done nutrition diaries where you log everything you eat and the calories for a nutritionist or something, and then you'd be astounded what you actually eat. If you do that with distractions, figure out how many times you get distracted. Could be just scrolling, answering an email, a notification dings, someone calls you, even though you got something important, you take the call where you could have taken it later on or the following day. All these distractions add up and get in the way of us doing what we need to do or what we want to do. And a couple of resources to help you manage distractions and make sure that you eliminate them from your daily schedule are these: the Pomodoro method. Talked about that. That's pulsing and pausing, right? That's focused work for a block of time and then focused rest and getting back into it. So a series of sprints throughout the day. And when you're doing a block of time, you limit all your distractions, turn your notifications off. Okay. Rescue time actually takes stock of how you spend your time, how many distractions you're having. It's a little more complicated, but it's a great resource. And Forest is an awesome app that I love. This is basically the Pomodoro method, but gamifies it. So check out those, and that'll help you really win over your battle with distractions. And we tend to underestimate how much time a task takes. So when we're putting in blocks of time in our calendar, allow a little bit more time than you would think it takes. You think it's going to take 15 minutes to clear your inbox of emails? Nah, allow 20 to 25. Play around with that, because what tends to happen is we allow 15 minutes, it takes us 30, and now we are behind for the rest of the day. So allow yourself and you'll feel much more accomplished. What also gets in the way, the most common thing, is not being able to say no, lacking boundaries. Okay, saying yes, especially us people pleasers and supporters out there. How often do we take on other people's tasks or delegations because, you know, we just want to help, we want to support, but we overwhelm ourselves. We don't have the capacity to do it. Remember, you've seen these when you've been on the airplane, the emergency instructions. Put your mask on first before you put masks on other people. And of course, a lack of accountability. You can set up accountability, holding yourself accountable, doing a goal setting practice whereby you're checking in, you use an app, or you have an accountability buddy. That's a surefire way of making certain that the things you set for yourself, you share it with somebody else, you challenge each other, you also hold them accountable. Somebody that you trust, that you feel comfortable with, to tell you the truth and push you, and you don't get defensive when they do it. When you tell somebody else your plans to do something, we're more likely to get it done and execute it. It's okay to let ourselves down, isn't it? We set a goal, we keep it to ourselves. Oh, well, I didn't get it done. But if you've shared it with someone or multiple people, we're more likely to get it done, because now we have accountability all around, not just with ourselves. Thank you for being with me. I've seen some people showing up, popping in, popping out. If you liked what you heard today, well, that's basically a really shortened version of a workshop that I do all about time effectiveness, being productive. How to be productive and not just be busy is an actual winning EQ workshop. So there's the QR code. Look it up, have a gander, see if you like it, and see if you think it would be worthwhile to do that with your team, with your company, or even individually. Reach out to me and I'd be happy to do a customized version for you and your organization. Being productive versus being busy. We scratched the surface on that today, but I loved having you. I love these LinkedIn Lives as always. And next week, it'll be another LinkedIn Live, but with a special guest. So I can't wait to see you then. Have a great rest of the week, everyone, and we'll see you next week.